Good afternoon. I'm Lola Brabham, President of the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities in New York, and it is an honor to be here with you today on such a significant day. We are so fortunate to have a governor who values higher education and who has an unwavering commitment to investing in the future of New York's workforce. Governor Hochul understands that higher education, both public and private, is developing the next generation of entrepreneurs, educators, and healthcare workers that our state needs. So thank you, Governor, for your belief in the transformative power of higher education and its critical role in workforce development. As you are aware, New York is projected to face a shortage of almost 40,000 nurses by 2030. Under Governor Hochul's fierce leadership, New York State has created the Nurses Across New York Loan Repayment Program, the Nurses of Our Future Scholarship Program, which helps to recruit and retain new nurses, and increased support for the Patricia McGee Nursing Faculty Scholarship to train the next generation of nursing educators. But there's still more work to do. That is what brings us here today. Nursing education programs across New York State are ready to help address this workforce shortage, but there is not enough clinical placements available. To address this problem, independent sector colleges, SUNY and CUNY, formed a historic partnership and worked in close collaboration with the bill sponsors, Senator Stavisky and Assemblymember Lepardo, and with the State Education Department to draft the nursing simulation legislation. The passage of this historic legislation illustrates how the public and private sectors form an ecosystem that together and only together can educate and develop the skilled workforce our state needs to address the needs of New Yorkers now and in the future. Thank you, Governor Hochul, for your leadership and for moving very quickly to sign this critical legislation to allow nursing programs to use simulation-based clinical education for up to 1/3 of clinical hours, enabling nursing students to receive the training that they need and nursing programs to expand to address the crisis that we face. I want to thank Senator Stavisky, Assemblymember Lepardo, SUNY Chancellor John King, CUNY Chancellor Felix Matos Rodriguez, Board of Regents Chancellor Lester Young, New York State Education Department Commissioner Betty Rosa, and Assembly Member Pat Fahey, Chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee. I'd also like to acknowledge CICU member institutions for their invaluable work in helping to pass this legislation. CICU represents over 100 independent colleges and universities in New York, and our schools graduate 2/3 of the nurses in this state. Several are here today, including the College of St. Rose, DeUville University, Maria College, Malloy University, and Russell Sage College. Thank you for your work. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the 57th governor of the great state of New York, our governor, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Oh, thank you, Lola. I was asking her how she enjoys being out of government work, but you really haven't left us. So thank you for the great work that you do representing all the independent colleges. And I also do want to recognize our sponsors here today, Senator Toby Stavisky for her leadership in championing this cause, and also Donna Lepardo, our sponsor in the Assembly. Thank you very much. Pat Fahey is also the chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee. He's been very involved in this as well. We also have James McDonald, the acting state health commissioner. Give a round of applause to our newest commissioner, and to Commissioner John King, our chancellor, and Felix Matos Rodriguez also for the work they're doing as well. So we have a lot of people here, and also all the students. Raise your hand if you're a student. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Maria College, I believe. So glad to be joined today by so many healthcare professionals, our students, our elected leaders, and, you know, as many of us took note of the fact that last week the World Health Organization declared the COVID health emergency to be over. Finally, But here in New York, we're really still dealing with the aftermath, the effect that is just so pervasive throughout society, and the sense of vulnerability that many New Yorkers have, having seen our state hit the hardest, city of New York particularly hit the hardest. And when it comes to rebuilding our healthcare workforce, we think about what happened during those really frightening days, weeks, months, and into the years. We lost a lot of healthcare workers. Some succumbed to the illness themselves. Some couldn't take the emotional trauma that they felt when they literally saw more people die in their presence than they had seen perhaps in their entire career. I mean, that takes a very human toll on individuals who are on the front lines. And so to our healthcare workers, our doctors and nurses and all the personnel who are there, you know, we don't diminish the fact that there's still lingering effects of this, even though it may be officially over. And the sacrifices that were made, the long, long hours, the fear of bringing home a deadly illness to your own children, your own parents, your own spouses, they did it. They did it. And yes, it's 3 years later, but I will never stop talking about how in awe I am of what they were doing, taking care of the most vulnerable. And so you heard from Lola, we do have a nursing shortage. That's not good news. This is a time when we need to have more people, not just from what we saw during the pandemic and the loss of workers there, but also an aging population and the challenges that people face as they get older and have, you know, living longer, living a lot longer. And so that brings upon the demand for more healthcare workers overall. So a shortage of 40,000 by the year 2030. I used to think 2030 was a long way off. It is right around the corner, my friends. We're all gonna be around for that one. So last year in my state budget, first time as governor, I said, we have a crisis, and I committed that we would continue to do everything we can to help grow the workforce at least by 20% more over the next 5 years. We invested over $10 billion in a multi-year effort, all hands on deck, across the board way to support our healthcare workers, our institutions, and that meant $4 billion in wages and bonuses for healthcare workers as just a way to say thank you. We know what you've gone through. We want you to stay in your profession. We launched the Nurses for Our Future program to recruit the next generation of workers, over 1,000 scholarships, full tuition to go to people who want to enter this profession and get a 2- or 4-year degree at one of our institutions. Also loan repayments. You know, the cost of education is high. So we help repay their loans, $2.5 million also helping to train nurses to go into our underserved communities. And that can be a rural area. It can be a very densely populated city block, but we know where they are, and we're trying to get more personnel to go into them. We also have to modernize the training process, and I have been on site at a lot of institutions. I've seen what the training looks like. I've asked a lot of questions. And right now, to become a nurse in the state of New York, you have to have clinical placement, your placement in a hospital setting. That's great, sounds good. I'm sure it worked at one point. It can be tough right now for schools to find the ability to place people, find a lot of logistics involved, and it's basically less convenient for people. So yes, it's a good way, but it's not the only way. And I've witnessed everything from a robotic model that I helped deliver a baby when I was at a hospital. So I think I'm going to stay right where I am in my career. But it also reminded me that, you know, these are so realistic, and the experience is basically identical, it feels, to what you'd be doing if there was a real person that I was attempting to deliver a baby from. So we have high-tech, high-quality simulation training available to us now, and experts say it really is just as good as the real thing. And so overseen by the Department of Education, again, Commissioner Betty Rose, I thank her for her leadership. It allows students to provide health care on a simulated patient. It offers more opportunities to be even in more intense situations and scenarios that even might not occur in a clinical environment. Think about that. You have everything thrown at you. You may or may not if you're dealing with real people. So in that sense, it's really an enhanced education. And healthcare professionals, public health leaders have been singing the praises of this for years, and so this is fantastic. It's a safe place to learn. help students manage their critical thinking, manage stressful situations, build teamwork, that camaraderie you need when you're on the floor and everything's going off and it's a tense situation. And so simulated training, now we like to think we're number one in everything in New York, and we are number one in many things. It's available in 31 other states. So this is not an area where it's actually, what you can say is nation leading. And so here we're saying, why not New York? What's taking so long? So we're going to make sure that we prioritize learning without sacrificing patient safety. And this will help clear the logjam, expedite training, and deliver an influx of nurses that are needed right now. So that brings us here today. I'm proud to sign a bill into law that will permit nursing professionals to complete at least up to one-third of their training, their clinical trainings through simulation experiences. And so I want to thank again Senator Stavisky and Assembly Member Donna Lupardo for getting this through the legislature, and Pat Fahey for her leadership. And as governor, I'm doing everything I possibly can to support the healthcare community, and particularly nurses, and trying to lighten the burden and get more of them. Think about this. The more nurses enter the system, enter the workplace, it takes some of the pressure off those who've been just trying to keep it going during some really tough times when they're just not seeing the number of colleagues on the floor managing the workflow. So it didn't just, the thing about the pandemic, as I mentioned at the beginning, it didn't just put a spotlight on the need for more personnel, more professionals. It also showed us the importance, the critical importance of state-of-the-art research facilities. I mean, these vaccines, these life-saving measures weren't just dreamed up anywhere. They were with highly professional organizations, a lot of them are public health labs, and finding new treatments for diseases that we have today and those we may not even think about that'll be there in the future. And so we are blessed to have this right here in Albany. Many people across the state were not even familiar with the words, the Wadsworth Center until the pandemic hit. And we realized that there are people, and I've walked through there during the pandemic and afterward, and I was so in awe of the individuals who worked morning, noon, and night. Unsung heroes, people not aware that they were literally developing life-saving treatments and vaccines and just doing everything they could with all their expertise, pulling together as a team. And so we have one of the world's premier public health research facilities right here in Albany. And we're proud of that, but now is the time to invest even more. If you've been on the campus, you'd say, this is world premier state-of-the-art? No. It fails to meet the demands of today and certainly the demands of tomorrow. So we're more than doubling the investment approved back in 2018. We're committing $967 million to a total investment of $1.7 billion. These are not inexpensive, but they're essential. And we're going to consolidate 5 facilities onto the lab of the Harriman office campus and be completed by 2030. And I'm proud to announce that we've searched the earth for the most talented individual. We found Dr. Leonard Peruski, and I want him to raise his hand and say hello. He's the center's new director. He led the international laboratory operations at the CDC's Division of Global Health Protection. That's a pretty good resume, Dr. Peruski. We're delighted to welcome you to join the family here in the state of New York and really take us to the next level. And I want to thank, again, Commissioner McDonald as well for helping us land the most talented people here as well. You've spent over 60 decades guiding research in over 60 countries, and we are so fortunate to have him right here as well. So that's the good news, and I'm feeling really optimistic about how we're going to tackle these challenges that lie before us. Part of it's investing resources into Wadsworth. The other part is getting more people and getting people excited again about healthcare professions. And it's taken a beating, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. But when you think about the power an individual has when they have the training and the ability to go out there and hold someone's hand in their scariest, darkest hour and give them some comfort, that is powerful. To me, there's no calling as rewarding as that, as much as it's so hard day in and day out. And again, to the nurses in the room, the Nurses Association, I want to thank them, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we keep our promise to New Yorkers. I always promise that we'll protect the health of New Yorkers, protect the health of the economy, and we have been through a lot together. But with bills like this, it's an important step forward to say We're going to do everything we can to get more nurses to help lift the burden from those who are there today and make sure that every New Yorker has the first-rate quality health care they're entitled to. So thank you very much. And with that, let me bring up our sponsor in the Senate, Toby Stavisky. Senator, how are you? I have to stand on this. It's nice and short. You're good. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Governor. And thank you to the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities. Lola, your office came to me a couple of years ago and said, we need help and we have a solution, and I certainly want to acknowledge you and everything that you have done. We've been talking about a nursing shortage for a long time, and Governor, you're about to help with that problem. Lola mentioned the Senator Pat McGee scholarships. Pat was in the state Senate when I was first elected, and I was the ranking member on the Higher Education Committee at the time. And they created a subcommittee or task force for the Higher Education Committee on the nursing shortage, and this had to be 20 years ago. Pat's mother was a nurse in the southern tier of New York, and she held hearings throughout the state, and I attended many of them, on how to resolve the nursing shortage. So this is obviously a problem that is not new. But today we're going to do something about it. In addition to the scholarship money that the governor has provided over the last 2 years, we're going to do something about it and make use of the technology to train a new generation of nurses with hands-on, literally hands-on experience. Doesn't have to take place in a hospital setting anymore. And this legislation, I hope, will make a profound difference in people's lives. Excuse me. The question of where can we find new nurses? Obviously, the nursing facility, the nursing schools are going to be one area, but we've got to look for creative ways, I think, to find additional nurses. There are a lot of nurses who are New York State trained and licensed nurses throughout the state who left for a variety of reasons, perhaps to raise a family, perhaps they were burned out. But I believe that the next step has to be to find these nurses and give them the incentives to return, whether it be economic, whether it be support, whatever. So I look forward in the days ahead to working with all of my colleagues, and I particularly want to thank Assemblymember Lepardo, Assemblymember Fahey, the staff from the State Senate and the Assembly, and particularly CICU, as well as the support we received from the City University of New York, the Chancellor Matos Rodriguez, and SUNY, and the Chancellor John King, and the State Education Department, which came on board with all of the amendments. They did a remarkable job in helping us literally cross the finish line. So I thank you all very much.
And now, please welcome to the stage Assemblymember Donna Lepardo.
Thank you very much. Governor, thank you sincerely for your efforts to strengthen the healthcare workforce. It really means a lot to communities like mine that have been through so much. We've all been through so much together. I think we're going to look back on this period and really congratulate each other and with awe that we all made it through the other side of this, of COVID. But as you've pointed out, We do have a longstanding issue with nursing. I represent Binghamton, New York, where flight simulation was invented 100 years ago. It changed the way pilots were trained, giving them a realistic hands-on experience. And to be honest, I wouldn't want to be in a plane with someone flying it who hadn't been through a simulation experience. It is a valued training tool, and as the governor mentioned, it encourages students to build teamwork, creative thinking, to really think on the fly on a simulated person. I take great comfort in knowing that nurses of the future will be trained in this way. These simulation experiences are being successfully used in other professions, as was noted, like nursing. At my own Binghamton University's Decker College of Nursing, I have been so impressed by the realistic nature of these state-of-the-art simulations. We have some that you can see the whiskers on people's faces. You can get a resting pulse. You can get some surprises, to be honest. They usually set up some surprises when I go there when someone starts coughing and having a stroke or a cardiac arrest. But in any event, I want to thank the governor. Thank you so much for signing this legislation, to Senator for your partnership, certainly to Pat Fahey for moving this bill through committee, to the advocacy of so many, as was mentioned, the SUNY Chancellor, the CUNY Chancellor, and of course, KICU, Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities, and my staff and others who work so very hard. So again, allowing 1/3 of clinical training to be simulation-based, not only going to help this nursing shortage that we're so committed to, it's going to expose students to a valuable hands-on learning experience, not unlike our pilots. Thank you very much.
And now it's time to sign the legislation. Please stay seated as Governor Hochul signs the bill.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Folks, once you get the pen, you can come on down. Thank you, Governor. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's event. We ask our guests to please exit the Red Room. Have a great rest of your day.
Hi, everyone. How are you today? How are rehearsals going? Hi, I've been spending all my nights working on mine, so I expect high caliber performances from all of you. How's it going? Good? Any questions?
Sure.
John.
Thank you.
Hazel? John, okay.
Nice to meet you. You sent a letter to President Biden on Friday about using Department of Defense facilities, about using Floyd Bennett Field. Have you received any response to that? Do you have any indication from the federal administration that they may be amenable to something like that?
Well, Friday is when they received a letter. We have been speaking from our Washington office to the administration, in communication. I don't have a response yet. I think it's a very reasonable request to recognize it is a federal problem, and there are federal assets, there's federal facilities. One that we think would lend itself easily to, standing up a large-scale operation, since literally the city itself is running out of hotel space. Their shelters are full, so we're trying to be creative in finding other alternatives. But also, I asked for military installations and other places they have where they can handle the scale that we're looking at. And so I've not heard a response back, but I'll be, speaking to them again and again and again.
Karen, we heard from the State Association of Counties today, and they're sounding pretty desperate about it, that they don't want to wait. They're really worried. They say the federal government is failing and that you could be the quarterback on this if you took charge and, got this settled somehow, or at least provided, a path so it's not so chaotic.
Well, I had a great conversation with the Association of Counties on Friday, also the Mayor's Association, and as well as our congressional delegation. And I heard a lot of interesting perspectives. One, I believe there is an acknowledgement that because of the right to shelter that exists in the city of New York, that when individuals who arrive in our country say where they want to go, they come to New York City, that does confer a certain obligation upon the city. That being said, we have literally been embedded now with their incident command center. I have my top individuals on the phone or in place to help navigate through the complexities of what the mayor has had to deal with. He has been struggling with this for a long time, doing the best he can under difficult circumstances. We've all been asking for federal resources, federal assistance. And so we're going to work with the counties. Some counties are looking to be very welcoming. And so there's conversations about what that looks like, as well as trying to figure out how to deal with the large-scale number of people that need housing. It's a humanitarian crisis, full stop. And I asked the counties, to be helpful to us in identifying any sites. I mean, it doesn't mean we're going there, but just let's look at the whole array of options that we have in the state of New York, and again, focus in the boroughs where the responsibility is, begins. But they don't have to go it alone. I mean, we're here to be helpful to them, and $1 billion from the state government is a significant start to providing the assistance to cover the cost of shelters. A lot of these facilities are run by independent contractors that come in and literally build up all the resources they need. I'm bringing in even more National Guard, going from 1,000 to 1,500. I'll do more if necessary. So we've been working very closely with the city, but also understanding that communication is everything. And there are some times when, if there had been advance notice, advance conversation, I think a lot of the contentiousness around the circumstances could have been abated. So we're working with the city to help them with that as well.
$1 billion, are you considering giving more money, or is more money needed for other counties? I think Mayor Adams said he thought it was going to cost $4 billion, but that's just an estimate. Nobody really knows.
That is the right conclusion, right conclusion, Karen, that no one really knows, how many more are coming. What is the cost of those who are here today? There are about 37, probably approaching 38,000 of people are housed in New York City now. A number of people, 61,000 came. That means a lot of people have already been absorbed. Some have families, some have found their ways to other parts of the country, other parts of the state. There's number of people living in Jamestown, for example. So we don't know the exact scale, but we've, excuse me, I spoke to the leaders, and we'll be looking at the financial assistance that's necessary, because the money follows the individuals. When they leave the city of New York, that responsibility from the consent decree going back to 1979 follows. So the counties are not being asked to pay for this. They're being asked to help us find space and to create a welcoming environment for these individuals, but they don't pay for this. But the state will certainly be helpful financially, even more so.
Governor, with 1 month left in session, more or less, what conversations, if any, have you had with the legislature on housing? You know, you suggested that at times that elements of your housing plan might have to wait till next year, but you seem to also suggest that some of that could happen this session. What would you say is your number one priority to get done in the next month around housing, and have those conversations begun already with legislature?
Yes, they started at the table when we were still in negotiations, talking about how it won't, these changes won't be in the budget, but what are the other paths to achieve them? And certainly by the end of session, there's an opportunity, but again, the same forces that were divided on the correct approach, are still very, very real. So that creates a challenge. I think that there's some low-hanging fruit that could be achieved, but I just literally a couple hours ago convened a meeting with our housing team to talk about the long-range plan of engaging the legislators, but also the advocates and the tenants organizations, the developers, and trying to find creative ways to achieve the goals that we all should collectively share, and that is to build more housing. So I can't say right now the likelihood of success with this legislature. I know they're looking at a lot of different ideas, and they know that I want to achieve this together, and that's the path we're going to be on, is figuring out a path forward together. And so we're doing a lot of convening now, but also over the summer, heading into the fall, and what else can be accomplished by executive orders, what opportunities I have as governor to find ways to create more housing on state-owned properties, for example, areas where I can achieve more. So we're very focused on it, literally just having meetings today.
What are the low-hanging fruit?
They could do ADUs, for example. They could start assisting the city develop the 500,000 units that Mayor Adams wants to. There are some areas where they could certainly look at grandfathering of 421A if they want to unlock many, many developments where there's really thousands of units that if the developers who already got to a certain point in the approvals, but it all dried up when 421A evaporated. So there's areas where they should be less contentious. There's an opportunity to get them done. But again, I'm not putting everything on success in this next month. It's a longer-term strategy if it doesn't happen now. Also, office conversions. Office conversions could be achieved. I think that's something that I think they could certainly do. It's not that controversial. It's expensive to do those, but look at the opportunities we have with the vacant space in Midtown, for example. So,
what does the response look like for the migrant crisis in more rural counties like the Southern Tier of New York?
what is the response? I'm sorry.
To the migrant crisis in more rural counties, Southern Tier of New York?
Are you speaking about Jamestown? They seem to be in Jamestown.
Elmira.
These are individuals who went there first. They were not transported there by the mayor. In fact, many of them have been living there since last summer. And so I spoke to some of the county executives about that. They want more assistance with them to be housed, and a lot of the relief organizations in those communities have stepped up. So we'll listen. If they have a specific request to us, we'll listen to it, but it's not a direct result of people being sent there from the mayor. That has not occurred.
Governor?
I'm curious about the county leaders today. They also said that they want that 180-day waiting period for the workforce approval to be waived for work authorization.
Work authorization.
Where do you stand on that? Should that
On waiving the work authorization? I've been asking for that since last summer. This is how we solve this in a way that is changes the whole narrative around this. the upstate elected officials, who you would normally say perhaps they're not as open to this idea, if you said these individuals were ready to work and could work and go out to the farms and the hotels and the restaurants, their arms would be wide open. And that is the challenge we're facing. That is the first thing I say on every single conversation I've had, and there's been scores of conversations with the White House and chiefs of staff and Secretary Mayorkas. If they would simply allow these individuals to have a sooner path to work authorization, 30 days instead of waiting the 150, it'd be a game changer. It'd be a game changer. These individuals may need a month or so in assisted in housing, but all of a sudden they get that job, they get that legitimacy, they can start finding a path to living, living out of the shadows. And I think that's so critically important. That has been one of my number one asks: money and work authorization.
One thing, sorry, I just want to follow up also on the topic today with the healthcare staffing. I know in a week you have an executive order that expires that allows the out-of-state nurses licensed in other states to work here in the state. Will you extend that executive order, and what are your thoughts about having nurses working here that are trained under another state's standard of care?
No, and they've been a lifesaver during a crisis. We have hospitals upstate that still really rely upon them, but this is still an executive order, which in my opinion, executive orders should have an expiration. So we're looking at that intently, but also there is an opportunity, because they're still in session, to remedy this with legislation. We're in conversations right now to see whether or not there can be a compromise around a time frame associated with how long they stay. But also, as you heard here today, we're going to need 40,000 nurses by the year 2030. That seems insurmountable if we don't start finding creative ways. And so we're working with the legislators, working with the nurses union, and trying to find a path forward. So we have a few more days to see if anything is likely to happen legislatively before that the monthly extension expires on Sunday.
Legislation sunset, if that's passed, after a certain period too?
I don't know if the language that they're looking at right now has a sunset in it. I don't know that. But those conversations are going on very intently right now.
Last question, Zach.
Governor, you and the mayor have been talking for months now about the work authorization issue, and you sent the letter on Friday asking for DOD resources, et cetera, space. So when you say that you haven't gotten a response from the Biden administration to your Friday letter, does that mean radio silence? Have they said they received it? Oh, we'll get back to you. What do you mean by that? And given the lack of responsiveness from the administration, for months, again, you've been asking for this, should New Yorkers be offended that the Biden administration seemingly hasn't done anything quite yet to meet the scale of the crisis?
I'm not offended that the president hasn't responded to something that came to their attention late Friday and it's Monday afternoon. If more time goes on, they'll certainly be hearing from me. I'll be paying a visit, continuing my regular efforts to say, help us here. This is a humanitarian crisis. It's not the making of New York. We're willing to help solve it. We have been. And again, I give a lot of credit to the mayor for what he has been having to deal with. And he's at a breaking point. We recognize that. That is why we're trying to find every possible solution, because while the number of individuals coming across the border may abate for now, we still have to deal with the individuals who are here now, and I don't know what next week's going to bring. Will that be another huge influx? I don't know that. I don't have the luxury of debating this in Congress or talking about it other than trying to solve this. And that's, full on. My entire team is involved in this. Our entire cabinet's involved in this. And so we're trying to figure that out. So I'm not saying there's, we haven't heard from the White House for a particular reason right now. They may be researching. They have to go to the Department of Defense. Floyd Bennett Field is actually run by the National Park Service right now. So I don't think they could just do this and say, make it happen. I know the operations of government aren't always as fast as we want, but I assure you that our Washington team is laser focused on getting an answer as soon as possible.
And no response means no response.
I could ask my team in Washington if they've got an acknowledgement of receipt or something. Do we know that?
We'll get back to
Okay, I'm dealing with the migrant crisis. I'm not staying on top of, when responses to emails come in. We're looking for the answer to be yes. I need a yes. and then we'll be ready to stand up a facility. And it does not happen overnight. There's a lot involved, but the city's at a breaking point. We have no other options.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming out, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you.